Beautiful souls, thank you for joining me in the kitchen today for another episode of the Soul Food Pod. Although today we're not in my kitchen, the mister is doing some work in here, so can you say upgrades? So I'm here all Beyonce cozy in our guest room wearing my Earth, Wind, and Fire t-shirt. If you know, you know. Check out my Instagram page to get the story behind this t-shirt so you'll know. I'll link to the IG post in the description. And remember, you can find the link to today's recipe in this episode's description or on the soulfoodpot.com. So today we're talking all about our Black folks Southern candied yams recipe, shared over 5,100 times and counting all across social platforms. So let's not wait another minute. We have an incredible listen to the recipe episode cooked up for you today. Let's dig in. Welcome to the Soul Food Pod, the first podcast dedicated to the history and culture around Southern soul food. I'm your host, Shonda Nicole, your go-to recipe creator for modern soul food cuisine, making life easier and more soulful, one recipe at a time. This season, I'm bringing you into my kitchen to listen to the recipe as I prepare iconic African American dishes, unveiling the secret ingredients and step-by-step instructions. You'll learn soul food culture, history, proper seasoning techniques, how to speed up traditional Southern soul food recipes, and how I efficiently use modern kitchen appliances to make your favorite traditional dishes. I'll teach you how iconic African American recipes are now easy enough for anyone to make and everyone to love. Turn up your next holiday gathering by bringing Black folks Southern decadent candy yams to the table. Sometimes less is more when it comes to comfort foods like these sweet treats. So whenever you're hosting this year's Soul Food Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, or it's a potluck at the office, Southern candied yams never disappoint when they're made the soul food way. Now, what are Black folks Southern candied yams? Although more sweet than savory, candied yams are a side dish often topped with marshmallows after cooking in a buttery mix of seasoning and spices that elevate this soul food dish to divine perfection. What do Africans call sweet potatoes? Well, yams are a vegetable similar to sweet potatoes, but come from the motherland in Africa. We get the word yam because Africans call yams nyami. Why are they called candied yams? Although the vegetable used in most candied yams recipes in the US is often a sweet potato, African Americans still call this dish candied yams. Netflix soul food docuseries High on the Hog illustrates how enslaved Africans recognized sweet potatoes in the southern US as similar to West African yams. So what do Southerners call sweet potatoes? Well, folks in the southern US also refer to this classic sweet potato dish as yams. Now, many people ask, are candied yams a Black thing? And what is the history of Southern candied yams? Well, again, yams are vegetables similar to sweet potatoes, but come from the motherland in Africa. Africans were used to cooking with yams, so when they were brought to the American South as enslaved persons, the next best thing available was a sweet potato, which we also called yams. True to Black folks' nature, they took something from nothing and elevated yams to the soul food delicacy many people love and crave today. Black folks' Southern candied yams. Do you want to make the most flavorful and delicious vegetables and meats? Do you have the most flavorful seasonings in your pantry or in your spice rack? No worries if you don't have the answers to these questions. I've got you with my step-by-step digital printable guides to take your taste buds to new heights. I put together a collection of the best African American seasonings and spices, recipes passed along from my grandma to mom to me, and now to you, in my easy step-by-step cookbooks and guides of all that's flavorful with these ultimate lists for soul food seasonings and how to season Southern fried chicken. Grab them from ShaundaNicoleShop.com, ShaundaNicoleShop.com. Also linked for your convenience in the episode description. Now, what ingredients do you need for candied yams? Okay, so the most common ingredients are going to include sweet potatoes or fresh yams, granulated sugar, butter, brown sugar, and cinnamon. Toppings for Black folks' Southern candy yams include marshmallows, raisins, roasted pecans, or a pecan praline if you choose. Thus, the word candied with the yams. Now, how do you make Black folks' candy yams? I love to make this classic Black folks recipe with a contemporary twist in, of course, my Instant Pot. You use the same soul food ingredients and then Instant Pot pressure cook the yams just right. So tender, sweet, and citrusy with buttery caramel toffee flavor. Yum! Instant Pot cooks Southern yams in a fraction of the time, only 5 minutes. So you can get back to all those other side dishes to pair with your Thanksgiving yams or your Christmas menu. All right, so kitchen equipment you'll need for Black folks Southern candy yams. As I mentioned, I use the Instant Pot electric pressure cooker. If you're baking the yams and not using the Instant Pot, you can bring in a 9x13 baking dish. And I recommend the KitchenAid's classic Y peeler to peel the potatoes. All right, so for the ingredients for the Southern candy yams recipe, you're going to need 3 to 3.5 pounds of sweet potatoes, 6 cups of cool water, a half a cup of water, half a cup of unsalted butter, a half a cup of brown sugar, a half a cup of granulated sugar, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, or you can use minced ginger. I actually love to use those packets of pre-frozen ginger that's already minced. It's like each little packet has has 1 teaspoon in it. Those are really easy to either chop in half and just drop right in. One of my favorite things. I will link to those in the recipe on the soulfoodpot.com. They're so convenient. Also, you'll need 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves, 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, and optional, which I suggest that you do this, a cup and a half of miniature marshmallows for topping. All right, so here are the instructions for Southern candied yams. You're going to wash the sweet potatoes, and on the Soul Food Pot, you can link through to my favorite vegetable scrubber I like to use. I actually have fun scrubbing vegetables. Peel and then cut the sweet potatoes into thick round wedges. Then set them aside to soak in a bowl of cool water to prevent the browning while you're preparing the candy yam syrup. Now melt the butter in a medium-sized bowl in the microwave. Add the brown sugar, granulated sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, maple syrup, ginger, ground clove, and the vanilla extract to the melted butter. Mix the ingredients well to create the syrup glaze for the candy yams, and then next drain the sweet potatoes in a round colander. Now, open the Instant Pot lid if you're using that and add a half a cup of water and the sweet potato rounds to the stainless steel inner pot. Pour the syrup glaze over the sweet potatoes and then close the Instant Pot lid. Ensure the valve is up in the position for sealing if you have an older Instant Pot. Otherwise, with the newer models, it does it for you. And pressure cook on high for 5 minutes. When the cooking is finished, allow a natural pressure release for at least 5 minutes. Then open the Instant Pot lid, move the valve to venting if you have an older model, and manually release any remaining pressure if applicable. Otherwise, with the newer models, you just press down on the button. Optional, open the Instant Pot lid and sprinkle the miniature marshmallows over the cooked candied yams. With the lid placed not entirely on the Instant Pot, so you want it in a resting position so it doesn't lock back into position on the pot, continue with the setting on keep warm. Then after about 5 minutes, check to see if the marshmallows have melted. Once they have melted, turn off the Instant Pot and transfer your Black folks Southern candy yams recipe to a serving dish. And then serve your Southern candy yams right away and enjoy. Now, of course, people ask what goes well with candy yams. So you can't have candy yams without the perfect accompanying side dish. Black folks will serve candy yams with a whole soul food Thanksgiving menu or delicious entrees and soul food side dishes. So for soul food holidays, now listen, it'd be sacrilegious to serve Black folks Southern candy yams without soul food collard greens. So don't do that. Now, what meat goes with candy yams? From smoked turkey legs, southern turkey recipe, oxtail, or black folks pineapple glazed ham. Those are some great options to go with your candy yams or a whole chicken. Now, let's dive into your candied yams frequently asked questions. All right, beautiful souls, you asked, from what are candied yams made? So, again, candy yams can be made from canned sweet potatoes, but ideally, fresh sweet potatoes are absolutely the best. Simply remove the skin from the sweet potatoes, then cut them into slices. After that, pressure cook or boil them until tender, and you can also bake the potatoes for this recipe. I like to cut my candy yams into rounds. If you're new to this recipe, it's really easy to cut them into rounds. There actually is a video on the soulfoodpot.com where you can see how I make this recipe. But some people I know, like my mother-in-law, she cuts them vertically into longer strips for the sweet potato. So either way, they are just as delicious. Now, how long do Black folks Southern candy yams take to bake? Candy yams take at least 15 minutes to bake in the oven. And a pro tip, you want to use the Instant Pot electric pressure cooker to quickly and easily make Southern candy yams because it only takes 5 minutes that way. Now, when using an Instant Pot, do you put water in the pot? Yes, this recipe calls for half a cup of water to add to the stainless steel inner pot before pressure cooking your Southern candied yams. And if I didn't mention already, the baked recipe is also available on the soulfoodpot.com if you prefer to bake your candy yams. Now, what's the difference, you ask, between sweet potatoes and yams? Because this comes up again and again and again. So let me explain again. Asked another way, people say, what is the difference between a sweet potato and a Southern yam? Or are candied yams and candied sweet potatoes the same thing? So no matter how you ask it, the answer is the same. One of the most significant differences between sweet potatoes and yams is in their appearance. Yams are typically larger, while sweet potatoes come in smaller sizes. Both vegetables have brownish reddish skin ranging from light to dark color shades. And another difference, sweet potato roots are tapered at one end, whereas yam roots are more circular. Furthermore, yams contain more starch and are tougher than sweet potatoes. So should you buy sweet potatoes or yams? Now, knowing that, sweet potatoes are more versatile than yams because they can be used in both savory dishes and desserts. Sweet potato pie, perhaps. Now, for this reason, many people prefer sweet potatoes when making their candied yams. Sweet potatoes contain more natural sugar, and therefore they offer a sweeter flavor than the yams. Now, do you boil your yams before baking? Boiling sweet potatoes or yams first is a way to decrease the baking time. However, you can eliminate this step if you're using an Instant Pot pressure cooker. Now, how do you store the candy yams? Using an airtight container, you can keep the leftovers of the sweet potato recipe and its syrupy sauce in the refrigerator for up to 3 days. Can you freeze candied yams, you ask? Yes, you can freeze these yummy delights for your subsequent cravings. Just make sure the yams have cooled down before placing them into a freezer-safe bag or airtight container. Now, beautiful souls, you ask, can you add marshmallows when baking candied Southern yams? So if this is your first time making this recipe, you may not know that mini marshmallows are the most common topping for this soul food candy yams dish. You can add the marshmallows during the last few minutes of baking, or like we just talked about, if you're using the Instant Pot, add them right after the natural pressure release. A canned yam, so candied yams from the can, can also make for a runny result because they do not require the same baking time and should not be pressure cooked like fresh ones. So if you're using a canned yam recipe, first, I always recommend using fresh yams if you're doing this recipe, but canned yams are pretty much already cooked. So yes, they could definitely become runny if you bake them or pressure cook them. Now, also ensure you haven't added too much liquid to the sugar mixture, causing it to become runny. A few tablespoons of cornstarch could also resolve this and thicken it up if you run into this problem. Now, can canned yams, that's a tongue twister. Excuse me, let me say it again. Can candied yams be made ahead of time? So, can candied yams be made ahead of time? Yes, they can with some planning. So, again, is worth saying twice. To prevent browning, the best way is to peel and cut the sweet potatoes and then refrigerate them in an airtight container with water. Then prepare the cinnamon sugar syrup and refrigerate it in a separate container. When you're ready to pressure cook or bake, drain the sweet potatoes and then combine the pre-refrigerated ingredients. So with some planning, you can make these ahead of time. All right, beautiful souls, are you hungry yet? Or better yet, inspired to go forth and cook? Wonderful. When you do make Southern candy yams or any other recipe, always remember that food for the body is not enough. There must be food for the soul. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Soul Food Pod. Did you enjoy today's conversation and recipe? If you want more easy to make soul food recipes and Southern food for the soul, then follow me for ideas that make your life easier plus more soulful. Subscribe here to the Soul Food Pod and subscribe to my food blog, thesoulfoodpot.com. On the Instagrams, follow me at Shonda Nicole. Have you had today's recipe? Would you make it? Comment below and let me know. And make sure you rate this podcast 5 stars and subscribe for all the soul food.